Can't get the co-host.
It's been a while.
Lulu never used to cough into the microphone like that. Hello and welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with Rosie Gilmoss and...
Jonathan Gilmoss.
Welcome back. It feels like ages since we've sat across from one another and spoken into the microphones in the slightly weird way that we do.
Yeah. I've nearly forgotten what to do.
Well, we can remember where to sit, and I'm afraid the children are playing outside because it's hotter than the surface of the sun and they are cooling outside and there's nothing we can do about that.
And two of them are decompressing from school.
Yes.
So this will either be a car crash, guys, or the best episode ever. You decide.
I mean, it might fall somewhere in between. let's not go for the both extremes. So, yes, welcome back. I'm hoping that you have all made it through the school holidays unscathed, because the school holidays are quite challenging, even if you haven't got children, because everything's a little bit out of whack and you see everybody off having this, I'm using my inverted commas here, wonderful time, and it can add a lot to the isolation. So first off, I just wanted to say to you all, I hope that you are all holding on in there.
And well done for getting through it.
Yeah, well done. I mean, and then of course you battle through this. I think we've had nearly 9 weeks off with two of ours, and you're looking forward to them going back necessarily, but you're looking forward to some structure and routine. And then they go back and you miss them, don't you?
Yeah, but I think it is the structure and routine that we miss.
And you don't get the best of your child when they've gone back to school after a long break, do you? You get the sort of, especially in this heat, you get the sort of slightly sweaty, grumpy little turd. I did not say that. Right. Anyway, back to the business in hand. So we have had a little bit of a hiatus. We had the best of intentions of continuing through the summer, but we had quite a hectic summer in a good way, and it just didn't happen. And quite frankly, as many of you would have seen from my Instagram post, I was struggling a little bit. I think anybody who has demon struggles because of the pressure perhaps of holidays and things like this. So, yeah, we didn't basically. I'm rambling on and kind of making excuses here, but no, we didn't do as much as we hoped. But we are back, and rather belatedly, I do want to pull you guys back and talk about Melissa's episode. So that went out, I can't remember the exact date, but it was the last episode that went out.
Yeah.
And it was a really, it was a really difficult episode to do, actually, because she has essentially been widowed twice. She was divorced from her first husband, but the nature of their deaths was so traumatic and awful. And I think, to say that I felt really affected by it feels sort of disingenuous because it hasn't happened to me. But even listening to it, I burst into tears mid-interview, didn't I?
Yeah.
In fact, we'll play that clip now because I think it was quite a moment because it was such a. Listen to the clip, guys.
Emma's swing is like almost directly under our bedroom, so I'm like sticking my head out, listen. I'm thinking I'm hearing him talk through the ceiling, and I'm pushing her. And then I was like, I need to go upstairs and check on him. I went upstairs, I unlocked the door, and he had blood coming out of his nose. And I said, what is going on? Like, I was so confused. I mean, he had the gun in his mouth, but I was so confused. I was like, my brain was just like, what? What's happening? And he was gone.
And he shot himself.
And his last phone call had been 6 minutes prior to his neurologist trying to get help.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It was within a span of like 10 minutes that I was like, I'll be right back.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. That's really chilling. Sorry.
Yeah.
So there you go. And that was Melissa talking about her second husband, Will. And he, as you heard, he just killed himself. You know, he went from being on the phone asking desperately for help to being dead. And I found that really scary.
Yeah, I'm glad there's no cameras in editing. Cause
yeah, we were both a mess. And I've got a couple of friends who've lost their partners to suicide, and one of them described it as being a long-term solution to a short-term problem. And it's that decision can happen. And I suppose in America, the issue of guns, I mean, we won't get into a political debate on this, but I'm anti. And that you can end your life that quickly and that violently, it's really scared me, actually.
Yeah.
And I think when you've teetered on, with your own demons and battled with mental health, I know personally I've talked on here how it feels to reach out in desperation and ask for help and for it not to be offered or not to be given to you. And it happened time and time again with this poor guy. And you can almost feel the frustration. He's on the phone, he's trying to get help and they're knocking him back time and time again. And you can almost feel that, well, fuck it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually left me speechless, as I am now. Even recalling it now, she was just outside with the little ones, and then everything changes, and
yeah, and it's sad, the feeling of hope being gone. I think that I struggled with, because hopelessness is probably the most damaging thing, isn't it? If you can't see a way out, you can't see any hope or a future, that's when the darkness gets in. And I would really recommend you listen, but listen with caution, because it's hard. It is hard. You're listening to two enormous tragedies that have happened to one woman in a relatively short time, and they've got children. Imagine having to navigate them. I mean, she's doing, from all accounts, a brilliant job, but I don't envy her.
No. Again, you all are incredibly brave.
Yeah.
Every story we hear just gets more and more powerful. And, well, no, not more and more powerful. That's the wrong words.
But every story is different. We were talking about this only yesterday, because I've had a few applications come through from COVID deaths, which I suppose the timeline would tie in, that people are now maybe getting to a point where they want to talk about it. And I sort of said, well, but every single story is different. Even the ones that are similar in timeline or diagnosis and things like this, every single story and every reaction to it is different. And I think the tagline of the podcast is "Every widow has a story," and I really genuinely believe that we do.
Yeah, and as you'll see on Monday, because the interviews are back on Monday, Emma's story was very, very close, very, very, very close. Oh
gosh, yeah, it was really close. So Emma Charlesworth, I sort of aware of each other, Instagram and the widow community, and she came on the podcast a couple of weeks ago and spoke to me. And yeah, her husband was in the sister hospital to the one that you were in. So you were in Maidstone. I believe he was in Medway, but don't quote me on this. And they were both in hospital. You were both in hospital at the same time with COVID, and the outcome for her was not positive, obviously. And I think that but for the grace kind of thing, once again, to see the parallels, and it's that sliding doors thing. And you cried editing it, didn't you?
Yeah, that was a tough edit, but such a powerful story. I really, really hope that someone in the press gets hold of the sentiment behind her story, because it's this, being ejected into isolation to grieve.
Yeah.
And everything else, and we go back to the mental health, and the tragedies that we've had just over the holidays with, suicides and everything else. It brings back the lack of mental health care in this country, and it's really, real difficult. And you know.
And one of the things you really struggled with was because you have carried an element of guilt that you nearly widowed me twice, which is completely unfounded and unwarranted because you didn't do it on purpose. But you said, now listening to how she had to navigate through the grief with a child in isolation without the usual channels of support, you found that really upsetting, didn't you?
Yeah. And I don't know, survivor's guilt.
Maybe, yeah.
Someone out there will have whichever guilt it is.
I think you're probably right that it's something like survivor's guilt, yeah.
But I remember the initial shock that got me was when it was the prospect of nearly orphaning Holly and sending you into a widowhood again. And then when I went through Emma's episode, it was like, it's not just any normal bloody... Like, it's ejected into total isolation and...
We talk about being put when you're bereaved in any way, but obviously our speciality is widows. And you feel like you're in a different country without a guidebook or any knowledge of the language. And then if you do that in isolation as well, where you're just surrounded by media stories and the insult of the way it panned out and the discoveries that were made, that
it didn't need to be. But then the other one is what support has been given out to these people that had to grieve in isolation, because there's a lot of them. There's a hell of a lot of them who are all probably now coming up to 3 years in. The chicken and wine phase has been out, whichever side of grief you come from, whether it's the partners. There is a period of chaos when anyone significant passes, and they're now coming up to 2-3 years, popping out the other side and looking up, and where's the resource to help these people?
Yeah,
and their children.
And there just doesn't seem to be anything. And what there is very, very overstretched. But thank you guys for talking about it, for being brave and putting words and voices and faces to those who were left behind from COVID, because you are often the forgotten ones, because there were so many people that died that the fear of them becoming a statistic as well, There's a lot tied up in this, and we'll dissect the episode after you've all heard it next week. But I would, again, approach with caution, particularly if you are personally affected by COVID. But it really is a very good episode, can I say?
There's lots to think about. It's a very long one. It's one of the longest ones we've done to date. But invest the time, guys. It's worth it.
Yeah, we actually did manage to get a couple of records done over the holidays. So I'm really looking forward to because we've obviously heard them because we were there, but I'm really looking forward to putting them out and seeing what you lot think of it. Previously, I've spoken about this condition that I've discovered that I have called PMDD, and it is a hormonal disorder, and it's really, really shitty. It's really, really, really rubbish. And now we know what it is. There is some treatment available. So the risk of sounding like an old lady, I'm going to give HRT a go. So patch me up and see what happens. But in the spirit of kind of wanting to, and I don't want to use the word fix myself, because I don't actually think I'm broken. I say it when I'm low. I say I don't want to be broken anymore. But what I have is a neurological condition and a hormonal discrepancy, which is causing these bouts of low mood, because I don't recognise myself when I'm like that. You don't recognise me when I'm like that. That's not your wife, is it?
No.
And it's distressing for me, obviously, but it's distressing for you. And I'm not trying to get you to say that you find me difficult or anything like this, because we'll keep that for private. But what I'm trying to say is you have been an immense support to me, and it must be very difficult for you to see that. But I'm also glaringly aware of what happens if I didn't have you. Who would help me? Who would pick me up off the floor? And I don't know. I probably would have just drank through it, I guess. But it sort of showed me how much the alcohol and sort of running from moods, and, I'm waffling a little bit, aren't I? But it's quite difficult to talk about this sort of stuff without emotion getting involved. But alongside the medication that I take and the potential HRT, which we're going to try, I'm really conscious of not sounding like a wanker, because I used to hate people that said stuff like go for a run, do a bit of meditation. And again, I realise that some of the audience will not relate to that at all, and they will not want to do it. But to try and get control of my mental health and my physical health, I suppose, I have been out running most days, and we have been using the ice bath, both of us, not together. And I've been making sure that my nutrition's a bit better, which means just waking up some smoothies, because life is hectic and getting your 5 a day is not always that easy. So, and yes, I have counselling, and that is, some would say perhaps a luxury, but it is for me, it's essential. And just sticking on a pair of trainers, and you can take your dog, that's optional, you may not have a dog, and getting out and getting that green and blue. And then you may not have an ice bath, but you can have a cold shower, and it does something to your body and your mind. And it just gives you that little extra bit of armoury against the darkness. So excuse me. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but I guess I just wanted to say that I'm fighting with you. I'm fighting with you guys. I'm not sitting up here with my new husband and my beautiful family and, you know, just cruising through this. I am digging deep with you.
You certainly are.
So I can hear my kids screaming. Why are they
Let's just check. See.
Okay, so now we're back. The children have been beaten into submission. They haven't.
No,
They've
they
just
haven't.
been
They'll
glared
just-
at.
Yeah, you'll be able to hear them in recordings.
Yeah, John just gave him the look. So I sort of sprung this on you right before we came on mic, but I think hearing your perspective of supporting somebody with it having a bit of a mental health crisis looks like, because many of our listeners will have witnessed this or experienced it, but may not have seen the other side. So I don't know. This may not work, but I'd be interested to hear.
See, well, when the PMDD first raised its head, we didn't know what it was. Like, you just absolutely crashed.
I thought I was losing my mind. I was really, really scared. You can probably hear my voice crack now, because I was so scared that this was permanent. And what we take away quite often from a suicide episode is the agony that they lived in prior to taking their life. And it must be unbearable to be that sad and that hopeless. So my fear was that it wasn't going to go away, that this was me now.
Yeah, I did have a bit of additional knowledge, because I've been through a similar thing the year before, when I was getting rid of all the COVID hangover that was left with me. And I certainly not as down and deep as yours went, but I remember that hopeless feeling that I can't be parent to these children. I can't be husband to you. I can't give anybody what they want. I'm just a horrible person. I need to be away. I'm a burden. And I remember that.
I remember you sitting on the stairs crying.
Yeah. And the one thing that I learned, and the one thing that I do say to you is, this feels bad now, but this will pass.
Yeah.
And you got to try. It's very difficult when you're in the depths of it to latch onto that time when you were sat in the garden going, this is amazing, the sun's shining, we feel great. Because much like a bad photograph, that's the one that you focus on.
Of course, yeah, good analogy.
And from what I've been reading, is humans are more biased towards the negative. It's just the way we're built. I don't know why. So initially, I found it very, very difficult. Very difficult, because it felt personal.
Yeah.
But now I've reframed it in my head, and I keep saying to you, let's treat this like a stomach bug or
Migraine.
a migraine, in one that you go away, everyone understands what a migraine is, and that you need quiet and darkness and peace and quiet. And like the migraine, it's severe, but it does pass.
Yeah.
But it's very, very difficult to watch you in that amount of pain, knowing that there's nothing I can do.
And it is that not being able to help. And I think this, when you tell me that this will pass, I'm able now to accept that it will, and that we know that this is a fluctuation in my hormones, and it will ebb and flow. Ugh, gross. But initially I thought that I was having some sort of breakdown. I thought that it was all coming to a head, and all this kind of grief and distress was coming out, and to be told that, and actually it was you that did the research, and then you and my psychiatrist sort of put this together. The idea that this could be treatable. There are lines of defence for it. You can take the mini pill, or if you're older, you may be prescribed some HRT. So if you are struggling, like I am, with this kind of cyclical drop in mood, particularly if you are over 40 or you happen to be neurodivergent, because unfortunately the comorbidity is the term between this condition and neurodiversity is very, very high. So you are, talk about kick a woman when she's down, right? And it can mean things like your ADHD meds don't work as effectively, and they help with your dopamine. So there's all these things tied up, and man, it sucks to be a woman, right? But there is help, and just knowing the name of this condition is really vital, because there is information out there. But I am 42 years old, and I have never heard of this.
No, I hadn't either. And it was when I was researching it, and I was actually speaking with my brother, and he was researching with me.
Oh, bless him.
I stumbled on, I think it was on some random Reddit forum, and then once you found the term, everything else became explanatory, and now we're at the final point of hopefully getting you the treatment to smooth it all out.
And the other thing was there was a few, but the people that also have it, because some of my friends have this and I didn't know.
Yeah.
And again, I talk so much about the feeling of community and belonging and not feeling isolated, and just knowing that this is, it's a relatively common, it's not hugely common, but it is it's not a unusual condition. And knowing that it's actually a registered disability, it is a crippling condition, actually. And I can only assume that it's been kept under control by sort of hormonal contraceptives.
Mask, effectively.
Yeah.
Seems they've done a lot of masking with the ladies since 98, haven't they?
Yes, don't forget ADHD doesn't exist.
The other problem is, we're quite fortunate in that we can access a private resource, and when some of you guys can't, and you're faced with a GP service, and how the hell do you break that?
But if you can at least go in with a name and say, I think this may be something I have, then they can at least look into it. I apologise to the gents, because this isn't massively, it might be, you might have a lady in your life, or you might have a lady in your life at some point, or even a daughter, because this condition can rear its head from, when you first hit puberty. So it is...
And if it does, guys, it's not personal.
Yeah, it's never personal.
It's quite a hard switch to switch in your head, but once you learn how to do it, actually, you can support them much better.
Yeah. Now, on a positive, should we finish on a positive?
Does anyone want to take a sweepstakes on who's going to win between Hector and Tabby in the pool?
Tabby. My money's on Tabby all day long.
Spider monkey.
I tell you one thing I do want to just mention, actually, before we go. Woodstock.
Yes, Woodstock. Yes.
So we held, as many of you will be aware, we talked about on here, we held a gathering here for guests of the podcast. It was lovely. It pissed it down, and it was still lovely. So just imagine how lovely that would have been in the sunshine. And we are contemplating the idea of putting together some sort of maybe a day, maybe a weekend event where everybody can come. It'll be a ticketed event. We will keep the costs as low as we possibly can. And we're just wanting to gauge interest really on this, whether people would be up for it. Would probably be in Kent, because that's where we live and we get to choose the location. But we were thinking, bands and a bar and stuff for the kids.
And if possible, represent quite a lot with businesses or bands or music, because we know there's a lot of musicians, there's a lot of talent, and there's a lot of businesses and a lot of self-starters out there. So if you got something that would fit into like a mini...
Think of it like
summer
a bit
festival.
of a crap festival. Like if your aunt threw best. No, it's going to be cool. We're sort of thinking, like a family-friendly hippie vibe. It's not a massive bend. I mean, it might be for some of you, but we just like the idea of, I suppose it's a lovely romantic image if I got in my head of like the kids playing in the field and the twinkly lights and the music. And I want to create that for us. I want this network that we've got. We got like 50,000 listeners. If I'm not going to do maths, I'll say like if 100 of you turned up, we'd have a right laugh, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and it also shows that we are still normal people, and we still have fun, and we still do and achieve things. So why not celebrate that at Woodstock? So if any of you want to get involved, drop us an email. Go on the website. There's a contact us email. Drop us an email
got a field. It won't be at our house. I'm just going to drop that in there before anyone gets any ideas.
It won't be, but it will most likely be based in Kent.
Yes, I already said that.
Yeah. I'm doubling it in
that's
case
our prerogative, remember.
Anyone wants me to go to Yorkshire, because that's not happening. Nothing wrong with Yorkshire, but I'm not doing a long
Some of
distance
the
thing.
finest men I've ever married have been from Yorkshire.
What can I say?
I actually spoke to a woman from Barnsley yesterday.
You did, yeah.
On the podcast, not just in general. It's when it disintegrates into this that we probably draw the episode to an end.
Yeah.
So
I bet you've missed us, haven't you, guys?
Yeah, they have. So once again, it was a very potluck episode. We kind of come into this with a bit of an idea of what we want to talk about and then completely disregard it. I didn't even bring my Post-it note into the office.
I have a photo of it.
You've got a photo of it.
We've pretty much stayed on point. We've done quite well.
Somebody's keeping the ship on point. So just to reiterate that we are rooting for you all. And actually, I'm going to drop one more tiny thing in. Sorry. I had, just before the end of the school term last year, I had a message come into our Instagram, and it was from a mother up at our youngest daughter's school who had been listening to the podcast and realised that our children went to the same school. And she sent me the loveliest message, and I sort of messaged back, and I didn't get to actually see her because the school finished. Anyway, I accosted her, Vanessa, her name is. I accosted her on the school run yesterday, and we had a hug. And again, there's just something about hugging somebody that has been through what you've been through, and it transcends age and it brings you together. Oh, and actually, the lady I spoke to yesterday, she's in Paris today with her widowed friends. So I think this is really special. And if you haven't already, join up to Way and see if you can find a local group. And, there'll be plenty of weirdos in there, but you might meet somebody you like.
Yeah, and your tribe will become full of widows at some point because we get you.
Yeah.
Everyone gets you.
I can remember one of the kids saying to me, do you only have friends whose husbands have died? That's doesn't bode well for the friends whose husbands are still alive, I suppose.
Yeah.
So
no, we will start to get back into normal service now.
Mm-hmm.
We've got quite a lot of exciting things to try out and announce over the next 6 months.
Yeah, we're actually going to rebrand our logo and things, so keep an eye out for that. Just fancied a change, really, didn't we?
Yeah, and try and bring out more content, more a destination to get all the help and all the stuff that we talk about, because it's quite the resource.
Yeah. I'm genuinely excited to get going again. So, thank you for sticking with us this long today, if you have, and we will be back on Monday with Emma's episode. And as always, guys, take care of yourselves. Lots of love.
Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye bye.
I forgot it was Friday.
Bum, 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 bum.